Electric mountain bikes are a really hot topic at the moment. Lots of people say that they give you an unfair advantage. Well, we thought we'd have a little test, a little challenge, to see just how much of an unfair advantage it is. This is Joe. Joe is obscenely fit. I'm John. I'm not obscenely fit. I like drinking pints of lager. So, to find out just how much of an advantage an e-bike will bring you, we thought we'd have a fun and completely unscientific little test, followed by a race. A quick rundown of the specs of the different bikes. So our trail bike is a Lapierre XM527EI. EI stands for its clever little electronic shock. That's got 130mm of travel up the front via a RockShox Revelation fork, 120mm out back. It's running knobby Nick tyres on 27.5 wheels, lightweight carbon frame, and it costs 3,400 quid in the EI mode. Our e-bike is the Lapierre Overvolt 700. It's got 160mm RockShox pike up front, monoshock out there, same amount of travel, aluminium frame. It's got fairly cheap brakes, fairly cheap rims, but it costs around £3,700, so it's pretty comparable to our trail bike. The weight is fairly substantial as you'd expect, but that's pretty much irrelevant until you're trying to like manhandle it around or lift it up and put it in the boot of a car.
The bike I was riding was my long-term BMC Team Elite. It's about a 9.6 kilo bike, so very light with all the kind of nice little additions I put on it. I was also fully lycra'd up with all my skin-tight lycra gear and my nice light helmet. Whereas John was got his full enduro kit.
Yeah, had the knee pads, bit of protection, full face helmet, goggles.
A little bit of backstory before we started the race. John and I had a bit of a go of the sighting lap with John on the e-bike, me on my XC bike, just cruising up there. We actually found out that John could push me up the climb with him on his e-bike, me on my BMC, faster than I could ride the climb.
Yeah, and to be honest, the weird thing about that, the thing of me that got the most hurt was my arm that I was pushing Joe with rather than my legs. So, first of all, I took a Lapierre trail bike. I took that out for a lap just to see how fast I could get around our test loop. Our test loop was about 6k or so.
Yeah, it was about 6 or 7 minutes long, depending on what bike we were riding.
Yeah.
One big climb, about 3 or 4 minutes, and then a descent down the downhill track up the Forest of Dean. And
then a bit of a flat section to get us back over to our starting point. So it's a pretty good sort of roundup of everything that you might see on a normal mountain bike ride. Anyway, I went out and I did a lap on the unpowered bike or human powered bike, and it hurt an awful lot. I'm sure there's some beautiful video of me about to throw up. And after that, it was time for our little race. So we set Joe off on his cross-country race bike. We gave him a 90-second lead, and then I set off on hill on the Lapierre Overvolt 700 behind me to see if I could chase him down and make up all that time. The crucial thing, of course, is the overall times. On the trail bike, I went round the lap in 6 minutes and 34 seconds. Joe, on his cross-country bike, was 6 minutes and 3 seconds. It's a fair chunk of difference over such a small lap. However, me on the e-mountain bike, that was 4 minutes and 36 seconds. So that's quite a considerable time saving there.
We then broke down the lap into 2 individual sections. There was the climb section and the descent section. On the climb on the trail bike, John did it in 4 minutes and 4 seconds. I did it on my XC bike in 3 minutes and 18 seconds. But then John did it on his e-bike in 2 minutes and 16 seconds. So just about doubling his climbing speed.
The really interesting one, I'd say, is on the descent. So on the trail bike, my descent time was 1 minute and 35 seconds. Joe, on his cross-country bike, his time was 1 minute and 54 seconds. So that's kind of pretty even for riding a full suspension trail bike versus a race hardtail. The interesting thing was, on the e-mountain bike, I was actually ever so slightly faster at 1 minute and 32 seconds. I'd say probably with the margin of error that we're working with, we can say that they're pretty much evens on that. Maybe the e-mountain bike has a slight advantage because it's packing more travel.
Yeah, so it was pretty clear that the e-bike was a lot quicker on the climb. When it came to riding the lap, I set off like a rocket, trying my best because I thought John's definitely going to catch me on the climb. near the top, he hadn't come into sight yet, which was quite a surprise.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing with that bike, again, because the Lapierre isn't fitted with a dropper post. I'd settled for sort of like a middling seat post height, which wasn't actually that efficient for pedalling. So I found that when I was going uphill, I could get that bike to it's limited to 15 miles an hour. So I could get it to its sort of limited speed, but then to try and put in any more effort was really hard. In fact, a lot of the time on the climb, I found myself clicking down so I could keep spinning to keep the pedal assist at sort of maximum.
Did you feel like you were trying as hard on the e-bike as on the trail bike? Because when I got to the top of the climb, I was absolutely nailing myself, trying my best.
I definitely hurt myself more on the trail bike.
Yeah.
And I think the reason for that is obviously because you're putting in totally the amount of effort. But on the e-bike, because once you hit that maximum speed, basically it's really, really, really hard to make that bike go any more than that, because it's a very heavy bike, carrying the battery, the motor, all of those things. And you just felt that once you hit that limited speed, it was just like, I could try as hard as I like, I won't be able to get it much more over this. And then when it comes to the descent, that was another really interesting thing. So I guess you're on your cross-country bike, you can hustle that thing down hills pretty well.
Yeah, it was a bit of kind of part of the downhill track, so I was really getting rattled around and my arms pretty sore by the bottom of the short descent. I really thought you were going to be coming on me quickly on the descent, but you found that with the e-bike it wasn't quite as kind of quick as you thought.
Because basically, when I got to the top of the climb, I'd just about seen you sneaking off onto the descent. And I was just like, well, I've got him now, I should be able to have him on the descent again. 160mm forks, 160mm suspension. I was just like, yeah, that's no problem. However, riding a bike that's that heavy has some very different characteristics from riding a normal trail bike. Namely, that the difference in weight between the bike and the rider means that the bike kind of wants to do its own thing. It wants to like push on. And trying to keep that thing held low to the ground over jumps and kickers is actually really, really hard. And then again, because there's so much weight in it, trying to break yourself down, it doesn't break like a normal bike. It breaks like a much heavier bike, because it is. And so it tended to push on through corners, and you don't get that adjustability of line. You can't go, I want to be over there now, and then sort of twitch the bike over. And even on the trail bike, I could sort of pedal out of corners, getting a few good crank strokes, be in the right gear to do that. Whereas with that, it just didn't work in the same way, because again, it's much sort of draggier, and trying to put in like a quick crank turn here or there,
doesn't help you too much.
Yeah, it didn't really do anything.
And then once we got onto the final kind of minute of flat, the other surprising thing, because I remember looking back and I could see you coming, I was like, oh, he's going to get me, because obviously he's on the e-bike, he's going to go into turbo mode, but we actually found that I was quicker on my 29er XE bike, because you were getting held back by that motor.
As soon as I came around that corner, I was just sort of like, right, this should be done now. But once you'd got up to, I don't know, you must have been cracking along at sort of like,
30k an hour,
30k,
probably, yeah.
Maybe a bit more. But again, I could not get that bike to go over about 29 kilometers an hour. It was just, no matter how much effort I put in, it'd go up to its boost thing, and then I'd just run into the sheer weight and drag of the thing.
Yeah, so I kind of finished about 10 or 20 seconds in front of John. When we broke the lap down into sections with my 90-second head start, nearly all the time John made up was on the climb. So the e-bike just absolutely tore up the climb, where I was struggling quite a bit. And then on the descent, it was kind of less time was made up on the descent, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You actually lost some time on that final flat section.
Yeah, totally.
I guess another question would be, would you buy one? Did you have fun riding that e-bike compared to riding your trail bike?
Half of the laugh with that e-bike is just when that assistance comes in and just being able to like surge up ridiculous steep slopes. That's amazingly addictive.
Yeah, it was really funny, John riding up the climb, pushing me as well, and we were both going faster than I could ride up the climb on my own.
Yeah, that's absolutely mad. But for me, I'd prefer the interactivity of a normal trail or enduro bike. You feel much more in control, it's much more agile, you can place it wherever you want it. It's a completely different experience. But if you lived somewhere that you've got a great big hill and a descent that you really like doing, you could knock out so many laps on that bike and get so many more descents in, whereas you'd be completely dead if you did that on a normal mountain bike. So Joe, how do you feel about these things? More importantly, how do you feel about being beaten by a man who thinks that lager is a vitamin?
Well, I'm not too precious about my KOMs, and I like seeing more people out on the trails, so for me, I'm all down for seeing e-bikes tearing by me on the climb. I like the pain and I like the effort, so yeah, all good for me.